We'll start with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute. Text number 12. Ye cha eva satvikaha bhavaha ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasaha tamasaha cha ye rajasas tamasascha ye mattah eva iti tan vidhi matta eveti tan vidhi na tu aham teshu te mayi natva aham teshu te mayi ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasascha ye matta eveti tan vidhi natvaham teshu te mayi ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasascha ye matta eveti tan vidhi natvaham teshu te mayi ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasascha ye matta eveti tan vidhi natvaham teshu te mayi
ये चैव सात्विका भावा राजसस्तामसश्च ये मत्त एवेति तन्विद्धि नत्व अहं तेषु ते मयि
ये चैव सात्विका भावा
राजसास्तामसाश्च ये
मत्त एवेति
तान् विद्धि
नत्वहं
तेषु ते मयि सात्विका भावा
राजसाः तामसाश्च ये
रामसास्तामसाश्च ये
तयेवेति तान् विद्धि
नत्वाहं तेषु ते मयि
ये चैव सात्विका भावा राजसास्तामसाश्च
ये
मत्त एवेति तान् विद्धि नात्वहं तेषु ते मयि
ऑनलाइन ये चैव सात्विका भावा राजसस्तामसश्च ये मत्त एवेति तान् विद्धि नत्वाहं तेषु ते मयि ये all those cha and eva certainly satvikaha in goodness bhavaha states of being rajasaha mode of passion tamasaha mode of ignorance cha also ye although mattaha from me eva certainly iti thus tan those vidhi try to know na not tu but aham I teshu in those te they mayi unto me. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. All states of being, be they of goodness, passion or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of this material nature. Translation with repetition. All states of being, be they of goodness, passion or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of this material nature. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. All material activities in the world are conducted under the three modes of material nature. Although these material modes of nature are emanations from the Supreme Lord Krishna, He is not subject to them. For instance, under the state laws, one may be punished, but the king, the lawmaker, is not subject to that law. Similarly, all the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are emanations from the Supreme Lord Krishna. But Krishna is not subject to material nature. Therefore, He is Nirguna, which means that these gunas or modes, although issuing from Him, do not affect Him. That is one of the special characteristics of Bhagavan or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus ends the Transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are discussing 12th verse of chapter 7, knowledge of the Absolute. So starting this verse, there is a special discussion that is going to take place on the nature of the modes of material nature, or as we will see in next couple of verses, there is much more description about what are these modes and how do they influence the living entity and how one can overcome the influence of these modes of material nature. So this is an important transition verse that is taking place from the previous verses, where the Lord is describing how His different energies, the different material energies, are nothing but His external energies, and is also discussing how the living entity is a superior energy, and how the Supreme Lord himself is beyond both of this and is the absolute truth, the highest truth. So this verse is a very interesting verse for various reasons, and we will see some of the reasons why this is so interesting. So one important thing that we can see here, that the bhavaha, the states of being, is a very interesting translation, states of being. So and here it is being said, ye, all those bhavaha, all those states of being. What kind of states of being? That could be in the mode of goodness, satvika, rajasas, the mode of passion, or the state of being can also be in tamasas, that is the mode of ignorance. So there are different states of being that is being described here, and then Lord says, matta eve eveti tan vidhi, are manifested by my energy. So this is another important point that is to be taken note of, that these different modes of material nature, or these different modes, that is different states of being here as being described, are manifested by the energy of the Lord. And then one can say, because it is manifested by the energy of the Lord, so in one sense one can say that, oh, this is manifestation of the Lord's energy, and therefore it can be also compared to Lord, and therefore it is also maybe equal to Lord, or similar to Lord, or same as the Lord. And therefore it is being said, I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. So this is an interesting aspect that we are looking throughout this previous few verses, that the Lord is saying, I am the ability, I am the power, and so on and so forth. In one sense, the Lord can be perceived everywhere, but again, it is also being said that I am independent, and I am not under the modes of this material nature. So, naham teshu te mai, I am not under this under the modes of this material nature. So this is a translation. So let us begin with trying to understand the first aspect of this translation, where it is being said all states of being. Now this is an important word, all states of being. Now usually one may think, what is so significant about the different states of being? Why is it important to know? People are living in their life, and they are going on living their life. So why is there a necessity to ever pay attention to the different states of being? But actually it is very important that unless one does not have the right idea of the different states of being, one can never make progress. And one may think that the state of existence, or the state of being in which the living entity is existing, that is all in all. And let us take, for example, animals. If you take the case of animals, we see that animals do not make big plans. They do not think of changing their state of existence to a different level. They are satisfied in whatever forest they are, whatever food they are getting, whatever basic necessities, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, the 4 basic necessities of life, whatever they are able to fulfill, they are satisfied in some sense. And therefore, they are not talking about what are the different states of being, what are the different states of existence, how I can make change from one state of existence to another state of existence. Animals do not talk. Similarly, we also see that actually most human beings also do not really think very carefully about the different states of being. In some sense, one may say, oh, they are planning to build big constructions, big communication channels, lot of technology, lot of transportation. They are all trying to make an advancement in some state of being. So one can think that they are making some steps to change the state of being. But actually, from the Vedic scriptures, we can actually come to know what are the real different states of being, and what is the pure state of existence or pure state of being. So unless one does not know what is a pure state of being, one will not make attempt to really make advancement. And in this connection, there are some beautiful verses which are described by Lord Kapila Deva, where he explains about the importance of how different living beings are satisfied in the state of their being. So I'll just look at a couple of verses. This is from 3rd canto, 30th chapter, and 4th and 5th verses will pay slight attention here. So there it is said, Jantur vai bhava etasmin yam yam yonim anubrajet tasyam salabhate nivritim na virajyate. So here it is said, Jantur vai bhava etasmin. Bhava means in this material existence, there are different kinds of living entities. And Prabhupada in the translation says, the living entity in whatever species of life he appears. So it does not matter which kind of species. So there is a further explanation to what is the exception to this kind of species, but in general, all the living entities in whatever species of life, yam yam yonim anubrajet, in whatever form they may obtain, tasyam salabate, in that form they find nivritim, they find satisfaction. So whatever species of life one has got, that living entity thinks that this species of life that I've got is actually very satisfying. This is all good. I don't need anything more than that. And then it is also said, na virajyate, and he is never averse to being situated in such a condition or state. So it's a very interesting point that is being mentioned, that although there are different states of being one can exist in, but the different living entities in different species, they find satisfaction in whatever species of life they are. And they are never averse. They don't find, although they may undergo so many difficulties, they still think that in that condition of species of life is the good condition. There is no need to be averse to that. So now this brings an important question, as why is that someone is not being averse to something? And Prabhupada explains in the purport very nicely that a man in a higher position may feel dissatisfaction with the standard of life of a lower grade man. So it is very natural, just like when we see a rich man, when he sees the condition of a poor man, the way he lives life, immediately he thinks, what abominable condition is he living in? I do not want to stay in such condition, and therefore he always wants to maintain the kind of lifestyle he is leading. But here is a point. But the lower grade man is satisfied in that position because of the spell of Maya, the external energy. Sometimes we see people maybe living in slums or maybe very abominable conditions of life, but they may live their entire life in the same space. Filthy conditions, not having proper facilities of life, but still they do not find it to be abominable. They find this is fine, this kind of life is also satisfying. Now here Prabhupada is explaining why is that someone is feeling satisfied although it is not the highest condition of life. That is because it is a spell of Maya, or the external energy of the Lord. And Prabhupada explains that this external energy of the Lord has two functions or two phases of activities. One is called Prakshepatmika Shakti and the other is Avanatmika Shakti. So Avanatmika means covering. So basically what happens is that although the living entity is finding distress, is not happy, is not in the right state of being, is not in the highest state of experience of life, but still this external energy of the Lord, which is and one aspect of it that is Avanatmika Shakti, is covering the knowledge of the living entity. And because the living entity's knowledge is covered, the living entity is not able to realize that there is something higher, there is something better than this. And therefore, he is not saying that this lower grade of life or lower species of life is not good, but rather he is thinking that this is all fine, this is all what real happiness is. And Prabhupada concludes by saying, even a hog who lives by eating stool finds himself happy. Although a person in a higher mode of life sees that the hog is eating stool, how abominable that life is. So, this is the condition. So, a common man actually cannot perceive what is the real state of being in which one can live, and what are the different grades of states of being one can live. Unfortunately, in the modern society, the different states of being or different grades of living means how much economical wealth one has got, how many cars one has got, how much social media likes one has got, how much YouTube followers have got. So people have got different conceptions of what it means to be in a good state of life. But that is not what is being talked about. The real states of being, in order to understand, and what is the highest state of being one can live, in order to understand that, one has to go and understand from the scriptures, sadhu, guru, sadhu, and shastra. Otherwise, we will remain in one state of being and never move to another state of being. And in the very next verse, Kapila Deva further explains that narkasto api deham vai na pumams tyaktum ichhati narkayam nirvrittau satyam deva maya vimohitaha. The conditioned living entity is satisfied in his own particular species of life. While deluded by the covering influence of the illusory energy, he feels little inclined to cast off his body even when in hell, for he takes delight in hellish enjoyment. So the living entity, even though in the hellish condition, here Kapila Deva is saying that the living entity is not inclined to give up his body. Rather, he is feeling satisfied in that hellish enjoyment because of the covering of the illusory energy. So this artificial satisfaction which the living entity is feeling is because of being covered by the Avarnatmika Shakti of the Lord. And in this respect, Prabhupada quotes the example of Indra. How Indra was cursed by Brihaspati, the priest of the demigods, because of the misbehavior of Indra. And because of this curse, the Indra had to become a hog. And after many days, even if Brahma came down to call Indra to come back to heavenly kingdom, but because Indra forgot all his understanding of what his royal position was, what he was in the past, he refused to go back. Because now, in the mode of illusion, he is now thinking all his family members, the place where he is living, the kind of food, what he is eating, that is the real happiness. So this forgetfulness is by the influence of Lord's energy. So it is, Prabhupada also gives here the example, because of this illusion, the influence of the Maya, the conditioned soul becomes so affectionate towards this particular type of body that if he is offered, give up this body and immediately you will have a king's body, he will not agree. So this is the influence of a living entity under the modes of material nature or the external energy of the Lord. This attachment strongly affects all conditioned living entities. So this is the point to note. So when it was mentioned the last verse that all living entities in whatever species of life as long as one is conditioned. Only human beings have this very special prerogative that they can come out of this false conditioning of life, where they think that this body, this species of life, this world is the real source of happiness. But rather, when Krishna is saying, is personally conversing, give up everything in this material world, come to me and I shall give you all protection, but we are not agreeable. We think we are quite all right. Why should we surrender unto Krishna and go back to his kingdom? This is called illusion or Maya. Everyone is satisfied with his standard of living, however abominable it may be. So this is the normal condition of the living entity. In this state of being influenced by the external energy of the Lord, no one wants to listen to the instructions of the Supreme Lord. No one wants to follow the surrender to the instructions of the Supreme Lord. This is because one is influenced by this external energy of the Lord. And therefore, everyone is thinking this artificial standard of living that they have created is the actual source of happiness. But it is not the real source of happiness. It is not. It is just an artificial delusion that the living entity is undergoing, thinking that this is happiness. And we will see it is because of this that the living entity also becomes bewildered. He becomes confused. I am thinking that this state of being which I am thinking is true, in the verses after this, Kapila Deva further explains how the living entity gets bound by his family, by his wife, by his children, by the community, society in which the living entity is living, and he thinks all of them are so connected to him that he does not want to give up any of these things. And how there is a false love, there is a false conception of my family, my children, and a kind of illusion that is created which the living entity fails to recognize and come out of this understanding of this false standard of living. So it is very important that a living entity must understand what are the different states of existence or of being one can be in. And after explaining that all states of being, and it's so wonderful that the Vedic literatures, Bhagavad Gita, and all the Vedic literatures very simplify the different categories of existence one can live in. And here it is very simplified, and it said, be it Satvika, Rajasaha, Tamasaha. So mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. So a living entity in the conditioned state of life can exist in these three states of being: mode of goodness, mode of passion, or mode of ignorance. As we know, because this is so fundamental to our existence, that every living entity under the influence of material energy has to be in one of these states or a mixture of these states. Now, that's how it is so wonderful that the Vedic civilization is also divided or categorized based upon these states of being. If one is predominantly in the mode of goodness, one is said to be a Brahmana. If one is predominantly in the mode of passion, one is said to have the Kshatriya. If there is a mixture of mode of passion and ignorance, then Vaishya, and if it's mode of ignorance, then it is called Shudra. So the categorization of the society is based upon the fundamental states of being in which the living entity is existing, the human being is existing. And it is also so nice that all these four different classes of people who are in different states of being work together for elevation in spiritual life. So Varna and Ashrama. So it's a wonderful system where, although one may be in the lower state of being, it's not that the one who is in the higher state of being in the mode of goodness is exploiting the one who is in the mode of ignorance and passion. No. Similarly, the one who is in the mode of passion, he is not exploiting or using his power for or strength for his own sake, but rather to protect the weak, as we saw in the last week. So this different modes of existence, the states of existence, are very scientific. And also, as we see in the 18th chapter, as how the different qualities of a Brahmana are described. How it is not something which is random, that one is said to be a Brahmana or one is said to be a Vaishya or a Shudra. So we can see Satyam, so truthfulness. So there are these various qualities of a Brahmana. So Samo Damas Tapa Saucham Shantir Arjum Evacha Jnanam Vijnanam Astikyam Brahma Karma Svabhavacham. So peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, wisdom, knowledge, and righteousness. These are the qualities by which the Brahmanas work. So this state of being is not something artificial. It is when there is these qualities are manifested. One can see, yes, he is in the state of this state of being. And it is not by birth that someone is said to be in this state of being or one is said to be in that state of being. It is not by artificial agreement that someone is said to be in this state of being. No. It is by one's own qualities that one is said to be in what state of being they are in. Are they in the state of are they in the mode of goodness? Then they have to exhibit these qualities. And if they are in the mode of passion, Shauryam Tejo Dhritir Dakshyam Yuddhe Chapi Apalayanam Danam Ishvara Bhavascha Kshatram Karma Svabhavacham. So heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. So these are the qualities. So one who have the quality of being the mode of passion will have these qualities of heroism, power, leadership, generosity, resourcefulness, So these are manifested in the people who are in the mode of predominantly the mode of passion. Similarly, there is a mode of the Vaishyas who have both mode of good passion and ignorance. So their occupation here is said as farming, cow protection, and business are the qualities of the work. So each have their own functions of quality of work, or by which we can recognize what is their predominant state of being. So this is all very scientifically can be understood, and how different psychology of different people lead them to perform different activities, inclinations towards different activities. And the system was so well arranged that they would make progress in the natural way of qualities that they have acquired because of their past activities, and they're engaged in a way which is natural to them. At the same time, they can make advancement in spiritual life. So these are the different states of being that are being manifested, and these are all in the stage of conditioned living being. These are all, though one can be considered slightly better than the other, but all these are actually are the states of material modes of nature. All those beings who are in these states of goodness, passion, or ignorance are still conditioned, are still materially influenced. They're not free from material influence. Therefore, that although the living entity which is transcendental, which is not supposed to be influenced by any material qualities or modes of nature, the living entity is now being situated in a certain state of being which is different from its natural state of being. And here, as we saw in the previous verses of Kapila Deva, the Lord's external energy, because of the influence of the Lord's external energy, the living entity is now being situated in different states of being. So this is the first aspect, that it is very important for us to note that there are different states of being in which one can live, and it is also important that one should understand, one should elevate oneself to the highest state of being. And what is the highest state of being? That we will come to know as we see the next aspect of the verse. So the next aspect that it is important to note that is being said here is that I'm in one sense everything, but I'm independent. So this is another very important aspect, as we see again and again this idea of oneness and difference is being described. And this is also can be said to be achintya bheda abheda tattva. So achintya means inconceivable, bheda and abheda simultaneously different and non-different. So this is the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who said that the Lord's creation and the Lord are simultaneously one and simultaneously different. So this understanding is very well described by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by giving various examples. And so Prabhupada gives various examples to understand this, and one example Prabhupada gives that of the sun. Prabhupada says, just like the sunshine, in one way we can say that we are all in the sun, because sunshine is all around us, and therefore because sunshine is covering all of us, in that sense we are in the sun. But at the same time, the sun, which is hundreds and thousands of miles away, is not really here. So we are not in one sense in the sun, at the same time we are in the sun. Just like Prabhupada says, the sun globe, and the sunshine, in one sense they are all one, but at the same time there is a distinction between all of them. So similarly, the Lord and Lord's creation and the Lord, the energetic and the energy, are in one sense the same, but at the same time in another sense they are not the same. So it is very nice to see how this philosophy brings together so-called inebrities or so-called contradictions into a very clear understanding. Sometimes people think that in this material world there is no God. God is somewhere else. So there is no connection to God and this material world. And therefore we have to only worship something else, but we have no connection to any of this material thing. This is all useless, or this is of no meaning to us. But on the other hand, the Vaishnavas, they do not think that this material world is false or material world is of no use. They see this as energy of the Lord, and even this energy of the Lord is to be engaged in the service of the Lord, because it is coming from the Lord, and therefore it is not that it is of no value, but when it is engaged in the right way in the service of the Lord, this material energy can also be utilized. So on the other hand, sometimes some other people think that everything is God. There is no distinction. The Lord created the energy, Lord's energy is this, and the Lord is one who created this, and therefore everything is same. Therefore I can worship this stone, I can worship anything, although there is this distinction. They do not see that distinction between the Lord and what is existing as his energy. So therefore this Lord is stating here, I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. So this is a very intricate point, which is very difficult to understand unless it is explained by the acharyas, as how do we see oneness and distinction between the Lord and his Lord's energy. Then it is also being said here, I am not under the modes of this material nature. So this is another very important aspect of the quality of the Lord. And so when the living entity, when Lord appears, the living entity mistakens Lord to be one among them. Because as we will see in the future also, in the coming verses, the living entity being subjected to certain conditioning of this material modes of nature, thinks that the Lord is also of the same category. And therefore mistakes that the Lord is also under the influence of this material energy. Especially the Mayavadis, they think that when the Lord appears, he also comes under the influence of material energy. And therefore he has a form, he has a body. But the Vaishnava understanding is that when the Lord appears, his body and his self are non-different. They are all transcendental. And therefore he never comes under the influence of modes of material nature. Prabhupada also explains that Krishna, when he was personally present, he performed various activities. He was taking care of cows, tending cows. He was killing demons. He was functioning as a king. So someone may think that, oh, he is in this kind of mode, or he is in the mode of killing, and therefore is in the mode of passion and things and so on and so forth. But Prabhupada says this is all wrong understanding. Lord is performing out of his own free will. He is not under the influence of any modes of material nature. He is doing as his pastime, as his leela, to enhance the pleasure of his devotees. And therefore, when it is not understood properly, someone may mistaken that the Supreme Lord is also under different modes of nature, is performing different activities. But Prabhupada explains that's not the case. And that is also explained when the different incarnations of the Lord are mentioned in the 3rd chapter of 1st canto, when Mahavishnu is creating this total material energy, and then the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters there, and Shirodakshaya enters further into all the atoms and the living entities. So one may think that the Mahavishnu and the other forms of Vishnu, the Purusha Avataras, are in contact with the material energy, and therefore they are also influenced by the material energy. But Prabhupada writes in those purports that the Lord is still aloof from all of these modes of material nature, although he is the one who is creating. Similarly, here it is also being said that I am not under the modes of this material nature. So it is mistaken to think the Lord is also coming under the influence of modes of material nature, just like another living entity is coming under the modes of influence, under the influence of material nature. Further, in the purport, Prabhupada is elaborating a few more interesting points. All material activities in the world are being conducted under the 3 modes of material nature. So when the living entity is under the influence of these 3 modes of material nature, the activities that are resulting are material activities. And when so 3 modes of material nature means mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. So when one is under the influence of these, the living entity is producing different varieties of material activities. Activities where there is selfish interest, fruitive intentions. On the other hand, when the living entity is under the influence of the spiritual nature, so Prabhupada says that when one is under the spiritual mode, the activities are spiritual. The influence is spiritual. And what is the nature of those activities? There are devotional activities. So when one is actually freed from these modes of material nature and enters into the spiritual influence, then immediately, naturally, the living entity is propelled to do devotional service. The activities naturally turn to be devotional, to please Krishna. There is no personal motive behind any of the activities. There is no fruitive intention behind any of the activities. So this influence under which the living entity comes, so we have that freedom to choose either to be under the influence of the spiritual nature. Prabhupada explains Samvit, Sandhini and Halladini. So there is another three kinds of spiritual nature. So Prabhupada says that if one comes under the influence of the spiritual modes, then naturally the devotional service is awakened in the living entity. And here, next Prabhupada is explaining, although these material modes of nature are emanations from the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, he is not subject to them. And Prabhupada is giving a wonderful analogy here, stating that the king may make various state laws, but the king is not subject to the law. In fact, recently there was an event where Queen was celebrated for some reasons, maybe for number of years of her being the Queen or some anniversary of the King of London or United Kingdom. And there was some message, some headline which was saying that how many laws which are not, to which the Queen is not subjected to. So there are hundreds of laws to which Queen is not subjected to. So similarly, although it is the Queen who is supposed to make the laws, now the governments are making, but traditionally the kings are supposed to make the laws, but although they are making it, they are not subjected to it. And Prabhupada is giving to explain that although it is Janmadiyasa Yataha, it is from the Lord that everything is emanating, but it is not that the Lord is under the influence of that which is emanating. So here in this case, the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance, although they are all coming from the Lord's energy, but it is not that the Lord is under the influence of them. Therefore, he is nirguna, which means that these gunas or modes, although issuing from him, do not affect him. That is one of the special characteristics of Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is another very interesting term which is quite often discussed. The Mayavadis and the Vaishnava philosophers have different interpretations of what this word nirguna means. So the word nirguna has different meanings, and Prabhupada explains all of them, and he also puts them in context so as to help us understand what it means. So in Krishna book, in fact, in 14th chapter, Prabhupada explains this word nirguna. Prabhupada says, as described in the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, the Supreme Person is the origin of all qualities. He is generally called nirguna. So if the Lord is the source of all the qualities, then how one can say that he is of no quality or nirguna? And Prabhupada explains that in a very interesting way. Prabhupada says, nirguna means whose qualities are beyond estimation. So Prabhupada is giving a very nuanced explanation here that nirguna means not no qualities, but nirguna means whose qualities are beyond estimation. Guna means quality and nir means beyond estimation. Both impersonalists interpreted this word nirguna as having no quality because they are unable to estimate the qualities of the Lord in transcendental realization. They conclude that the Supreme Lord has no qualities. So here Prabhupada is saying, because they are not able to estimate the qualities of the Lord, they conclude that there are no qualities. Just like I am not able to see sun right now, and I am concluding that there is no sun. But that is not the real understanding. The Lord has, I am not able to conceive, that is not the criteria to say that there are no qualities to the Lord. But that is not actually the position. Prabhupada says that is not the fact. The real position is that he is the original source of all qualities. All qualities are emanating constantly from him. How therefore can a limited person count the qualities of the Lord? One may estimate the qualities of the Lord at one moment, but the next moment the qualities have increased. So it is not possible to make an estimation of the transcendental qualities of the Lord. So Prabhupada is explaining this word nirguna means whose qualities are beyond estimation. And Prabhupada is giving further explanation saying that the Lord's qualities are ever expanding. And there is no way that even if one may make some estimate of what the qualities of the Lord are at one point of time, very next moment the qualities of the Lord have increased so much that there is no way to make any estimate of what the qualities of the Lord are. And in that sense, the word nirguna is used to mean that the Lord is having qualities beyond estimation. Prabhupada also in another place explains that nirguna or no guna means no material qualities. So even Prabhupada explains the other kind of meaning, that even if we refer to nirguna, nir means negative prefix saying no, even if we say there is no quality, it does not mean the Lord has no qualities. It means that the Lord does not have any material qualities. And it is in this sense that the Lord is called as nirguna. And in another place Prabhupada says nirguna means one who is above the modes of three modes of material nature. Because the Lord is always in his spiritual being, in his spiritual existence, never influenced by the modes of material nature, and therefore he is also known as nirguna. And it is for this reason that when we hear Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, which are nothing but the transcendental glorification of the Supreme Lord, who is nirguna, who is above the three modes of material nature. So when we Uttama Shloka Gunanuvadat, so when we hear, when we glorify and chant the wonderful qualities and pastimes and activities of the Lord, which are also nirguna, that means which are also above the modes of three modes of material nature, and they also are in transcendental, they are also transcendental, and therefore they, when we associate with them, we are also associating with the nirguna quality of the Supreme Lord, of the Lord himself, in fact. So Prabhupada also says that nirguna does not mean to become impersonal. It is not to refer that it is so when, as we were talking about, when the glorification of the Lord, which is chanted as described in Bhagavatam and by the various acharyas, that is not of anything of this material world. So as soon as we chant the holy name, we read the verses and the translations and the wonderful purports of the Bhaktivedanta purports, they are all transcendental and they are not of this material world. And it is by this association of nirguna beyond the modes of material nature, the Supreme Lord, that we can also overcome these lower states of being, mode of goodness, passion and ignorance, which we'll also see in the further verses. And it is by that one can elevate one state of being and come to the real state of being, which we'll also see in the coming verses. I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
These three modes of like goodness, passion and ignorance, we always bombard with these three modes of nature. So it is maybe in goodness, maybe it's we can bhakti yoga we can continue, but if it is in mode of passion or ignorance, it would be very, very tough. So you think like we should always try to be in goodness and maybe above, beyond the goodness to sustain in this bhakti yoga?
So actually, Srila Rupa Goswami explains in the preface of Nectar of Instruction. He says that at least one has to come to the state of Satoguna. if one comes to the state of Sattva Guna, then what needs to be done next to go to the next level will become easily understandable, or it will be revealed. It can be understood by a person who comes to the mode of Sattva Guna. And for the mode of Sattva Guna, there are various instructions, the regulations in Shastras. So, as we also see in Bhagavad Gita, there is this one term, I forget the term, but Prabhupada says in one of the explanations there that there are different shastras, there are different injunctions, there are different spiritual organizations which may try one to elevate one from one state of ignorance to maybe passion, to maybe goodness, and then to the state of
Sattva Suddha Guna.
yes, Vishuddha Sattva or Suddha Sattva. But moving from one to another takes a lot of time. But that's why the process that is given to us, that is of chanting and hearing, Shravanam Kirtanam, immediately elevates one to the mode, highest mode, provided one is doing it purely without offenses. But even to elevate ourselves, and therefore there are various instructions, do's and don'ts, as given by Srila Rupa Goswami. They are all meant to help us elevate to come to the state of goodness, and in that state of goodness, when we also practice our spiritual practices, it helps further. Furthermore, when we practice spiritual activities as prescribed by Srila Prabhupada, they also elevate us to help us to naturally go to Sattva Guna, and when done in the pure state, it immediately also takes us to the pure state of goodness beyond the material influence. So, practicing the do's and don'ts are important to keep us in Sattva Guna. And practicing the pure devotional process as given will also can take us immediately to the pure state, provided we do the right way.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
I had one question regarding the king need not follow the rules. Actually, like what we have read and what Prabhupada always quotes is Lord Ramachandra, he always led by example. Even Lord Krishna also led by example by, following whatever his guru said and following his elders. So always everybody has been leading by example by following the rules and regulations. So when we say the king need not follow rules, how do we understand this problem?
So, yes. So, basically, it is that the king is not subject, in the sense the Lord is setting an example so that other people will not misuse the position. Just because one is king or one is a leader or one is have a certain power, it does not mean that because one is above the law that he can do anything and everything. Just like the president of the country in America, when he did something, people said, no, this is above the law, how can you do that? So we should punish him. Some would say, no, he is above the law and he is not to be punished. So in the ideal state, in the ideal case, the head of the kingdom is not to be subject to any of the laws. But the king can voluntarily agree to set an example for general public as how they should lead life, or for a common man how they should lead. They may follow the example, they may subject themselves to the law and do certain activities. That does not mean they are actually subject to the laws, they are governed by the laws. They just are doing so as to set an example for others. It does not mean that they are forced to do that. They are just doing out of their own interest for the well-being of the people, so that the general people, when they become leaders, they don't misuse that position and power. Does that help?
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
So if there are no questions or comments, we'll stop here. Granthra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you for joining. Hare Krishna.